I would say I was this close to canceling today's live. I went up to Steamboat this weekend and my anxiety over driving has dramatically changed since I've had kids. I mean, we drove through winter wonderlands, whiteout conditions, and just didn't worry about it too much when it was Janae and I. I mean, of course, I wanted to keep her safe, and of course, myself. But now that I've got kids, we went up snowshoeing, and I'm going to show some cool pictures here. Not necessarily of the snowshoeing. We'll have a video come out here in a few weeks. But we went up snowshoeing on Thursday last week, and we're going up the canyon, and we're going to go by, up Cameron Pass. And I'm like, geez, this is just slippery. I'm like, I'm not sure if I should take Laramie to Walden to Steamboat or just go through the canyon. Stressed me out doing that, but ultimately decided to go up through the canyon, and that was clear on Friday. We left at noon, so we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of sunlight and daylight time to get there. It's about 3.5 hours. I have talked with a few people who, laugh and say 3.5 hours. No way. It's 3 hours tops. For me, it's 3.5 hours. I don't believe I'm a slow driver, but again, I think kids have changed me a little bit, especially when they're in the car, taking my sweet ass time when driving. But we went up the canyon on Friday. It was super clear. And then Saturday, when we were in Steamboat, we looked ahead and there was no snow in the forecast for Walden, Gould, Steamboat. And that's kind of like the three major areas that are like, all right, if we're going to have any type of snow problems, that's where it's going to be. And it was clear when we were looking at the weather forecast earlier last week. And get up to Steamboat, and we get dumped. Steamboat gets dumped on by like a foot and a half, maybe even 2 feet of snow. It snowed the entire day. We got there Friday evening, started snowing Friday evening, didn't stop snowing until essentially Sunday morning. And we woke up, and I looked at Janae. I was like, I mean, I don't have to be anywhere. The only thing I've got is our weekly live that we do, and I can cancel that if needed. And we really were waiting and decided to wait. There was going to be some sun out yesterday, so we thought that would be beneficial, even though the temperatures were going to be low coming back. So we decided to make the trek. Took us 4 hours, not too crazy as far as comparatively to 3.5 hours. There were cars going faster than I was on the trip up, but regardless, we are here today, coming to you live, and we're going to talk about some weather things here in a little bit, and Fort Collins and activities in Northern Colorado. So thank you for joining. We are going to go over some things that have happened in Fort Collins, Northern Colorado over the last week happening, and then some city council discussion as well. So we'll get rocking and rolling. Now, I haven't really talked too much about the Colorado wolf introduction. I think it's been a couple of years. What has it been? It was voted on in 2000. What was it? 2019 is what it was. We voted on wolves being reintroduced, and it passed 51% to 49%. It's been pretty contentious because livestock ranchers have been impacted from this. Now, commentary has been these wolves are making their way down from Yellowstone, but regardless, it was passed by the state of Colorado, and they want to reintroduce like 150 to 200 wolves on the low end. And this year they were going to introduce 15 new wolves from Canada between January and March. And there is a group that is wanting to petition this, saying basically put a halt to this until further programs can be in place, further clarification. And it seems like both groups are posturing. Interesting. I get all that kind of stuff. I don't necessarily, I guess where I would stand is, I don't know if, I'm sure, we obviously had impacts on buffalo and other animals and trees. And as we get, further along, we see the impacts that, humans are making. And, maybe obviously wolves were probably natural to this area at one time, but have since moved out of the area, whether that be by force or by nature. So I guess I don't pay too close attention to it. if I'm going to just be honest, I think there are other things for me personally to pay attention to, and the wolf reintroduction is not one of them. If anything, I will say I went on like 3 hiking trips over the last few weeks, and it's nice to think the only concerns are out there are not necessarily bears during this time. They're hibernating. Mountain lions for sure, but by the time I know the mountain lion's there, I'm probably dead. It probably sees me a million times before I see it. But I guess having wolves out there as well. My dad and I were doing some snowshoeing, and we discussed that, I guess that would be really the predator that we should be most concerned about if this does, in fact, take its reintroduction. So regardless, something that's going through in Colorado right now. I'd be interested to know your thoughts or opinions, so feel free to comment, engage, maybe help me on my shortcomings of something that I might not know. But the reason why I'm sharing this is, and I'm going to share my screen. So if you're watching, I would love to know what your thoughts are, whether you're a wolf expert or not. We were coming down the canyon, and this was, I believe, before Rustic, as far as location goes. But here comes the share screen. Okay. Let me get here. Okay, I get that you can't see too much right yet, but if you look in the center of the screen right here, center of the screen, and then here's a close-up. So we were driving. Now, I think there's only like 7 or so wolves in the state of Colorado. So, but we were driving down the canyon. This was on Thursday, and this was right around Rustic area on the canyon. So not too close to the Jackson County line, but close enough. And that's where they're mostly been spotted in northern Colorado, is kind of that Jackson County area. But we were driving. We saw an animal shoot across the road. We're like, what is that? A fox, a wolf, or a fox, a coyote? And then we're getting closer, and it kind of stops closer. So we look out, we look to our left. We're like, no, that's a freaking wolf. And my dad's continuing to drive. He kind of puts the brakes on. He's like, do you want to get out and take a picture? I was like, yeah, I do. So I got out. I took a picture. Again, this is, I think, even zoomed in a little bit here. Yeah, it is zoomed in a little bit here, but then a much closer crop in from here. Sorry, it is on my iPhone, not super clear. But then when I was taking it, there was another one that scurried across the road, and I was like, oh shit. I was like, I guess we are in nature right now. I was like, is there a third? And so, I didn't want to be one of those people that were caught being stomped on by an elk or moose, because I'm getting in the way of nature. So I definitely wanted to check around my surroundings. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are, if you believe this to be a wolf or a coyote. Now, I would love for it to be a wolf, because I saw a wolf. But if it's coyote, it's coyote. But I have sent it out to a few people. They truly believe that it could be a coyote, it could be a wolf. So it probably needs some expert. The coloration on his kind of under his jaw, the size of his head and body. Most are thinking that it is a wolf, but to be determined, I guess. So maybe if anyone has a wolf expert, that'd be awesome. All righty. Moving on, though, and that was just kind of fun. That was exciting, because I was thinking to myself when I was driving up the canyon, I was like, I've never seen anything like super cool. I've seen elk and deer and all that kind of stuff, but I've never seen like a bear. Janae saw a bear with 3 cubs while they were paddleboarding in Horsetooth Reservoir. A friend of mine seen a mountain lion. So I'm like, man, I've never seen anything cool. And then maybe it was just a coyote. You never know. All right, moving right along. Loveland Valentine's Day is coming up. It is its remailing program. They see 100,000 letters come through its post office where they get a special stamp from the Sweetheart City and get that sent out. So if you want that special stamp, doesn't really speak to me necessarily, but if you want to get that special stamp to somebody, show that you're thinking about them and love them, Loveland is doing their remailing program. The ranch bought a $10 million, 72-acre piece of land north of its ranch complex. Their goal is to be self-sufficient by 2039. And they've got some tax funding that is going to be helping them along that way. But I mean, this is going to be a huge facility, monumental to Northern Colorado. I think a 2,500 seat amphitheater we talked about last time, expansion of some of its lounge areas, its youth hockey facilities. So a hotel that's going to be coming there. So exciting things happening at the ranch, in addition to Martin Lynn's hockey arena that he's going to be building off of US 34. King Soopers, again, opening January 29th. That's exciting, 123,000 square foot facility. The fuel station will not be open. We'll be opening mid-spring. There's projects in Fort Collins. Like there's not a lot of like blighted projects. When you go through Fort Collins, there's not a lot of plywood on windows that you see or shuttered buildings. They're all pretty much active and operational. There are a few, and one of them was an apartment complex building behind kind of the Dairy Queen Elevations Credit Union, and just kind of has sat there. And it's been resurrected a couple of different times. One from a group, Vuelo, who is actually the group that's working on the retail and multifamily opportunity on Mason and Mountain. But there's a group that's picked it up, and it looks like it's going to be about a 397 student-focused bed there, that there already are the elevator shafts. There's a lot of things going on. Development was submitted November 18th, 2024. So probably a few years before we see this thing up and operational, but it would be great. Again, there's going to be this huge focus on development along the transit line, and we're seeing it all over the place along that line, with the granary on the south side of Fort Collins, right by the Harmony Transit Center, and among other projects that are really taking shape and focus around that transit line. So hoping to get more cars off the road, and students and workers being able to use that max transit line. Let's jump into things. Oh, this is, I want to share this. I hope you guys can see this. This was an interesting thing to look at. What we saw here, this is, and I will make it larger so everyone can see, but this is our sales and use tax as of December 2020, at the end of December 24. So the entire year of 2024. And what's significant about this is that we had a city sales tax, a 0.5-cent sales tax, where half of that was going to go to Parks and Recreation, 1/4 cent to traffic, and 1/4 cent or to transportation and traffic, and then 1/4 cent to climate focused initiatives. So let me increase this a little bit. So it's our first year. So it also shows like what type of impact that had. I'm going to scoot down here first, because this is actually what I want to show first, and then we'll have to scroll up. But let's go view full screen. All righty. So what I want to show you is the increase of, we had major increases across the board. And a lot of this is, because there was an extra 0.5 cent of sales tax that we hear. And in total, we were up 15.3% this year in December versus last year. And then annually, we were up 12.7%. So we had 12 points. Our government received 12.7% more revenue than last year. Now, we did see building permits decrease by 6.7%. So, that's not insignificant. And that suggests that builders are saying, hey, we're not building as much. We're building 6.7% less than we were in 2023. So that's definitely something to watch. Now, these numbers are our sales tax collected. It doesn't necessarily talk about how the economy of Fort Collins did. This does, because this talks about what our next net taxable amounts were. So how much dollars were how many dollars were had the opportunity to have sales tax charged to them. And here we see a much, much more reasonable We had a 2.4%. You could look at this almost as like a GDP for Fort Collins, not necessarily all encompassing by any means, just what is taxable. Has a sales taxable event. But people are still spending money. Now there's areas, let's go through some of these: building materials, garden equipment, and supplies. People are putting less money into their houses. Maybe there's less discretionary funds, but there was 7.7% fewer dollars spent on that. 13.7% increase in miscellaneous retailers. 7.1% spent fewer on furniture and home furnishings. Again, people spending fewer dollars on their in-home. But what are some areas that went up? 7.4% general merchandise. 15.4% other. 5.5% in retail. So overall, our economy, people are spending more, 2.4% more than they did in 2023. But not anything huge. Now, here's the last slide I want to show you guys. Yeah, the last slide I want to show you guys is here are some numbers. Net taxable sales subject to sales tax. Again, this is just looking at how much in millions was subject to sales tax. And we did have a good increase from 2023. 2022 and 2023 were a little stagnant. People are getting... but big increases, $70 million between 2020 and 2024. So economy is definitely increasing. And then let's see here. Net taxable sales subject to sales tax. Oh, this was December. And then annually. Okay, so annually for a pretty substantial 1,100 times millions, whatever that number is. That's not billions by any means, because we're not a $1 billion government. We're less than that. So that's got to be 100 millions, close to. Regardless, the focus here is looking at how Fort Collins is doing as an economy, how our residents are spending their dollars, how they feel about the economy, how they feel about spending dollars. Now, granted, again, some of this is CPI driven. Things just cost more. So there's something to take into consideration like that. Like a number that would be worth looking into is, what is 2.4% increase versus what the CPI was? I think the CPI was 2.8%. So probably we didn't necessarily increase how much we're spending. It's just that the cost of goods increased by that, actually probably even by a little more. So maybe even we spent a little bit less on actual physical items versus 2023, but kept up with CPI roughly. So I thought those were super interesting to look at. We'll continue on. There's a reason wolves were run out, cattle. Yeah, I'm sure that is a large reason why. Continuing on. Things to do this week and weekend. And then we'll get into city council review real quick. And it was just an appeal process, but I thought it was super interesting because of how development has happened in Fort Collins. There's music all over the place. There is at the coast, on January 17th, there is, from 7 to 12, a metal artist. So not my forte, but there is music all over the place at Washington's, the Aggie. So definitely, no shortage there. Marlon Wayans is coming on January 16th. Now, I'm not a huge Marlon Wayans fan by any means, but that's a pretty decent name coming to the Lincoln Center. So I got tickets for my wife and I. That's Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. Farmers Market this Saturday at the Foothills Mall. Go check that out. It is super cool. And it brings a lot of activity and excitement to the city of Fort Collins, or that mall area. Here's something interesting: a hassle-free travel to Estes Park Festival. There's an indoor festival for Native peoples across the country, kind of traditions and things of that nature. and they're taking off from the Global Village Museum of Arts and Cultures on 200 West Mountain Avenue at 9:30 on January 18th, and you'll get back by 5:30 p.m. Food will be at the festival. You do need to sign up, though, by 5 p.m. Wednesday, January 15th. So if you're interested in that, I think that'd be super cool, interesting. Jump on a bus and they take you down there. I thought this was interesting, talking about, Northern Colorado wildlife and wolves. There is a Follies of the Wild, a burlesque fundraising show for NoCo Wildlife. This is going to be at Avogadro's Number on January 18th, 8 to 10 p.m. Now, I don't think that's my deal per se, but could be fun for some, and if you're looking for something to do. All right, now jumping into the city council, the meeting. It was relatively quick, super. It was their first meeting after like 3 weeks, but essentially what they're going through, and it was the first reading of a new ordinance, and essentially what it's going to lay out is how can appeals go through. And there's going to be like kind of two, because there's been a lot of confusion in how the process works and how delayed both for the developers and the people that are appealing it, and kind of the anxiety that entails. So they're wanting to clean this process up, which I think is super important, because one of the podcasts we have on the Fort Collins Fellows was with our planning manager, Clay Fricky, and he was suggesting that, not on the podcast per se, but, off air, was just suggesting that the appeal process is super confusing. It's not clear. It's a little bit of a process cheat code for folks that want to gum up some of the development process. So it seems like it needs to be addressed. Here are some of the things that will happen. A lot of these, now there's a lot of clarification too. Part of that clarification is if you are wanting to appeal a ruling from the planning and zoning, you have to have been involved with its initial processes. So you're going to get, if you're within, I think it's 800 feet of this development, or, have substantial interest in the area, you're going to get a letter in the mail saying there's a development neighborhood meeting, and here's your chance to get involved. And if you are not involved or make comments or somehow getting your interests heard from planning and zoning, city council, you would not be able to submit an appeal. So you can't, basically from there, from my understanding, is you can't just appeal it after it's been approved. It's one of those things where they want you involved from the beginning to show that you are concerned, not just with if it gets approved, but if it gets approved or denied. And then from there, a lot of these appeals that I've heard over my 4 or so years listening to city council, a lot of them are these fair hearing appeals. Now, I've really only heard one appeal work, and that was recently on the Linden Street Hotel building, where the owner was wanting to replace, I think, 140 windows. And what they actually suggested was that the land use code was not properly interpreted, and that was successful. But a lot of these developments, like the Mission, Sanctuary of the Greens, the Union, a lot of these have suggested or have appealed based off of a fair hearing. And all of them that I've seen have been shot down. So what this process is wanting to do is clear up for those that have interested or have interest in these decisions can kind of understand. And there's also paperwork, because some of these big development companies have attorneys upon attorneys, and some of the appellants are just a group of neighbors that are like, we don't want this here, and don't have the attorney or funding backing what their position is. And so the city of Fort Collins also is saying, hey, we're going to have like a referee that says, you need to have this information in. There can't be any new evidence submitted. So again, if you're involved with it along these early processes, get all of your evidence in at the beginning. And then once you submit the appeal, there's timelines. They're trying to drop the timelines from 35 days from 77 days to 35 days. but there's got to be kind of a referee that says you are missing documentation. You have an opportunity to make this right. And if you don't, then it gets sent away. If you do, then you continue forward. And then there'll be an administrative appeal hearing prior to it going to city council. And then once you pass that part, if it is like a fair hearing or if there's other substantial evidence and it does get brought in front of the city council, at least all parties involved, the appellant and the applicant, I think is the way that it's phrased. It always confuses me. All know that this is something serious that the city council is going to have to review and subsequently make a decision on, versus a kind of misunderstanding of, do we really have anything to stand on this appeal, and take months, years of time for both the developer and also the neighbors, where maybe it could have been done much quicker. So that did pass. I believe it was 7-0 or 6-0. I think all council members were there. 7-0, and we'll go on to second readings on January 21st. So if there is an appeal moving forward, there will be a new process. But the biggest takeaway that I would say on this is, if there is a project that you feel either A, isn't following the land use code, or B, you need to get involved with because you feel like you have to, you'll have to get involved at those neighborhood meetings within the planning and development very early on, and not after a decision has been made. So that's probably one of the biggest takeaways from that meeting. Now, I don't have anything else going on today in our live, but will I be performing, Bill, on the metal show? No. I'm definitely one of those individuals who feel like I sound pretty awesome. Like I should definitely have a music career, and when I'm in the shower, and then I get out and it's quite horrendous. Kids hold no opinions back, and they definitely let me know how horrible I am. So maybe, you never know. I mean, maybe metal's my calling. So I appreciate you guys following along. And now I do also, there is one last thing I want to show you guys. And I posted this on the YouTube channel. We are expected to get a significant cold front coming in basically Friday and sticking around until Monday. I wouldn't necessarily don't think they're calling it a polar vortex per se. But my dad's commercial building actually was flooding today. So I gotta, as soon as I'm done with this call, check to see what type of calls and miss. But he had a frozen pipe that burst, so turned water off at the street. But some tips and tricks basically to make sure that you can avoid frozen pipes that we send out to our tenants, and let all of we definitely just want to be very informative. Like, hey, especially if you're going out of town or if you have a vacant unit, but we're expected to get some negative temperatures. We have on average 7.1 days that drop below zero in Fort Collins on an annual basis. We just had one, I think a week or so ago, when some clients from Arizona were in. So hopefully they enjoyed that day, but we've got 3 more coming up. So some ideas: keep your thermostat set above 65 degrees. I remember when my wife, at that time, girlfriend, we're going back home. I was born and raised in Fort Collins, but we didn't ever take any, and maybe my parents knew what to do, but regardless, keep your thermostats above 65 degrees. If you're leaving town, don't try to save money by turning your thermostat off. Like, you have pipes that need to be kept insulated. If it really gets super low, let your faucets drip. These are pressurized water lines. And if there's water running through it, it's kind of like a river. Rivers don't necessarily always freeze. There's areas and it's running water is kind of a cheat code. Opening the cabinet doors to your kitchen sink, your bathroom sinks, especially if they're on an exterior wall, right? Interior, you're pretty insulated, but if they're on an exterior wall, I had an apartment complex that I managed for a long time, and we had broken pipes all the time. The builder must have been from Arizona coming to build in Colorado, because all of the plumbing was on the exterior walls, not like on the interior, ducks and chases where it probably should be in Colorado. But if you live in a house and you have a house, especially on the exterior wall or a bathroom on the exterior wall, open those cabinet faces, let warm air circulate through there. Sealed drafts, towels. If you've got an older house and you got some shifting going on, you can put some towels around to kind of seal some of those drafts. And be careful with those, those animals. I would say it's freezing for them. Their paws can freeze pretty quickly. So just make sure that maybe you shoveled a little pathway. I don't think there's gonna be much snow. It's just gonna be really cold. But just be careful. So that is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or maybe it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But regardless, this coming weekend, definitely going to be cold. Keep yourself safe. If you've got a property here in Northern Colorado, those are some tools to help keep it safe and not frozen. Appreciate you guys watching. Until next Monday, because I'm not heading out of town. My wife is. She's going up to Red Feather to our cabin with a group of gals, and it's supposed to be freezing up there. So they'll probably just be sitting by the fire there most of the time. Have a great day. Take care.